I'm Isabel Wright.
I'm Katie Bush.
And I'm Maggie Hersey.
And for 2 weeks, we're cutting out animal byproducts by going vegan to increase our sustainability.
Before we talk about our data and our experience with this challenge, we should talk about the environmental impacts of this veganism. The agricultural industry impacts climate change through digestion generated methane, feed production, manure processing, transportation, and waste. Animal agriculture has a large carbon footprint. It represents 44% of anthropogenic methane emissions, which is one of the primary drivers of climate change. Methane doesn't linger as long in the atmosphere as carbon does. However, in the first 2 decades after its release, methane is 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide. In the United States, methane from digestive process of animals measured about to be 164.3 million metric tons of CO2 emissions in 2014. If global consumption of meat and dairy continues to grow at the current pace, the agriculture sector could consume about 70% of the allowable budget for all greenhouse emissions by mid-century. Dairy cows specifically produce about 1/3 fewer GHG emissions from the finished beef breeds or cows used as meat consumption. Apart from emissions directly from cattle, irrigation and farm equipment greatly contribute to the overall fossil fuel energy use in the production process. Though extensive irrigation practices, nitrogen highly concentrated in cow manure can also leach into groundwater. One study finding that 23.2 grams per kilogram nitrogen leached through the 3 major phases of beef cattle production. Moreover, health problems will also continue to increase.
Americans consume far more meat than necessary to get their recommended amount of daily protein. Eating too much meat is associated with serious health risks. A diet heavy in red and processed meat is linked to increased risk of certain cancers, heart disease, obesity, and in some studies, diabetes. The National Cancer Institute of Maryland conducted the largest study to link both processed and unprocessed meat to an increase in death rates from several diseases. There is not a large amount of data available, but the results suggest that the long-term health of vegans and vegetarians for some conditions and diseases far outweighs that of someone who regularly consumes animal byproduct. In addition, body mass index and cholesterol levels are lower among vegans, according to a study completed by the University of Oxford. One of the biggest risks of cutting out animal byproducts is protein deficiency. However, there is no reason why cutting animal byproducts out of a diet should result in protein deficiency, as long as you're consciously making sure to include protein-heavy foods.
Our ecological footprints were also impacted by going vegan. On average, our global hectare use decreased by 2, decreasing the amount of land that is needed to sustain our diets and energy needs when vegan. Our carbon emissions also decreased by 2 tons per year. A decreased carbon footprint in land use makes veganism far more sustainable than meat-eating diets, as CO2 is a large contributor to greenhouse gas emissions leading to global warming, and decreasing our land use decreases deforestation for animal and crop farming use. In order to collect our baseline data for comparison, we measured the total weight in grams of all animal byproducts for 2 weeks. Dairy was the highest contributor to the overall weight between the 3 of us. Each person put a total consumption in grams each day into a spreadsheet. During the 2-week challenge period, because we were all completely vegan, we have no data. Overall, my experience going vegan was pretty good, although it was much more difficult than I anticipated to find vegan options at Chow. Most of the days I ended up just eating a salad because I didn't want to risk trying the vegan options that they had already. Even during the baseline data collection period, I found myself eating way less than I usually would, so that I didn't have to take out my scale and weigh my food and try to figure out what was vegan and what wasn't vegan. And I also found myself eating much less healthy while I was vegan, because snacks like Oreos and animal crackers were vegan options from Walmart that I bought, and I ended up just curbing my hunger on those. So yeah, it was positive, but I probably wouldn't do it again.
Now, my experience with going veganism was pretty interesting. During the 2-week period, I ended up having a show during the halfway point, so I focused heavily on eating rice and vegetables. During that time, it was kind of hard because Chow doesn't actually have a lot of vegan options, so it was really hard trying to find foods that fit my needs and for what I was doing. So, in my opinion, this campus actually isn't that sustainable for vegans.
I'm already a vegetarian for environmental reasons, so obviously I didn't have to sacrifice as much as my group members. However, I do live on campus, so I depend on the dining hall for my meals, and they offer very limited vegan options. I've realized that it's very important to be mindful of what you take in when going vegan because it's very easy to be unhealthy and vegan.